Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to the morning session of our 21-day program. It is our immense pleasure to have with us Dr. Subhadeep Ghosh. Sir is Principal Scientist and Station in Charge, ICR Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute, CMFRI. And the topic chosen by our resource person is, so can you go to the previous slide? Breeding and culture of Indian pompano and grouper. Sir, please unmute yourself, and your slides are visible. You need to unmute yourself so that unmute yourself, and can you turn on the camera so that we could see you? Yeah, perfect. Can you switch back to the PPT so that the PPT is visible now? Yeah. No slideshow. Can you press the Alt tab again? Yeah, perfect. Please start. The session has been recorded, and please start, sir.
So friends, thank you so much for introducing me, friends. A very good morning to all of you. I am Dr. Subhadeep Ghosh. I am working as Principal Scientist and Head of ICR CMFRI Visakhapatnam Center. The topic was breeding and culture of marine finfish. So here basically in Visakhapatnam, we do breeding and culture of two very important, commercially important marine finfishes. One is the Indian pompano. You can see the photo on the right hand side. The fish on the right hand side is an Indian pompano, and the fish on the left hand side is grouper, orange spotted grouper. So basically in this lecture for the next 1 hour, I'll be concentrating on the breeding and culture aspects of these two very important, commercially important fishes, grouper and pompano. Now coming to, before starting with breeding, I just wanted to give you an introduction on why mariculture is important. If you see the figure given here, this figure shows, this figure is from SOFIA, that is from FAO tabulates or computes the captured fisheries and cultured fisheries production globally. And if you see from 1950 onwards to 2016, if you see the orange color portion signifies captured fisheries, from the marine waters. So if you see the captured fisheries from the marine waters has been stagnating over the past several decades. Now, when we talk in the context of increasing population, increasing protein, fish as a source of protein, to counteract or to overcome this stagnating production from marine captured fisheries, aquaculture is the only viable option. And CMFRI, because our mandate is marine, so we started mariculture. CMFRI, in fact, if you see in this figure, over the last couple of decades, the increase in production is mostly because of aquaculture, both aquaculture in inland waters as well as aquaculture in marine waters. So if you see CMFRI started aquaculture way back in 2005. In 2005, the first marine cage farming was done at Vizag, from where I am speaking. And in 2007, the first successful harvest was done of sea bass. Around 3 tons was harvested from one marine cage. Subsequently, cage farming spread to other maritime states. However, when we embark on cage farming in a big way, we were severely constrained by lack of seed. Because if we have to go on cage culture using only wild collected seeds, it is not viable. So after that, then we felt that we have to develop breeding and seed production technology, and subsequently CMFRI till now has developed seed production technology of various commercially important finfishes. I'll come to that in subsequent slides. Now the technologies, whatever available here in the marine systems, are seed production techniques, then culture techniques. Culture techniques are mostly in coastal ponds and marine cages. We have also developed recirculating aquaculture systems for zero wastage of water. Then feed management plays a very pivotal role, and also stock improvement and health management. So these are the key aspects when we speak about mariculture or in general aquaculture. Now coming to cage aquaculture. What is cage aquaculture? Cage aquaculture involves growing of fishes in the sea, enclosed in a net cage, which allows free flow of water. in contrary to pond, where you need to maintain water quality, where you need to provide aeration, where you need to give water exchange. Marine environment is a dynamic system. So herein there is no requirement to maintain water quality. Water quality is pristine, and so cage culture is much easier when compared to coastal pond culture. Again, it is a production system made of a floating frame of different kinds with varying dimensions and shape. However, we have standardized the marine cages to be around circular cages of 6-meter diameter, which we have found to be optimum for our.
Sorry to disturb you, sir. Just one more 1 second. Can you go to this Google Chrome and resume presenting? Again, I request the participants, please put your microphone on mute and do not start presentation. You are taking the presentation away from the. Next time anyone does that, I'll remove that participant from the group. Yeah. No. Go to the Google Chrome.
Just a minute.
Go to the. Yeah.
Alt and tab. No.
Sorry, the presentation is on, but resume presentation. Resume presentation, sir. At the bottom right, resume presentation. Yes. Yeah. Now do one thing, sir. Go back to the PPT, then you can start again. Continue from the.
Shall I start from the beginning again?
No. Continue from the slide, sir. Again, I request participants, please. You just have to press join. Don't press present when you are joining. You just have to join. This is a simple task. Next time this happens, I'll remove that participant. Please continue, sir.
Okay, so I was speaking about cage frames and different kinds of cages which are available in Indian marine waters. And CMFRA has done for the last decade plenty of experiments. And we have seen that cage, the dimension of 6-meter diameter circular cages with around 4 to 6 meter net depth to be optimum for Indian conditions. For the open sea, we recommend HDP, high density polyethylene, and generally we use fixed mooring systems. So this is all about marine cages. I'll come again in subsequent slides. Now I told you in the earlier slide, marine cage farming vis-a-vis pond farming. If you see in pond farming, the average productivity is around 0.5 kg per meter cube. So if you take 1 hectare, it comes to 5,000 kg. Whereas if you see the production in marine cage, the production in marine cage is around 25 kg per meter cube. So you can see that 50 times production has been multiplied in cages when compared to pond. So the productivity or the production per unit area is 50 times higher in cages when compared to ponds. So this is the benefit, the major benefit of cage farming, because you don't require to maintain water quality. Being a dynamic system, the water quality is pristine. There is no problems associated with oxygen levels or any other nutrients. There is very less problems with respect to health. So the productivity is much higher in cages when compared to ponds. And also when coming to land-based farming systems, there has been pressure on land for various other uses. So the amount of land available for aquaculture has been decreasing over the years. So because of these aspects, cage culture has received major attention over the last few years. So already I have told you regarding the advantages of cage farming. Cage farming, actually you can utilize it in a 3-dimensional system. So it is a more production when compared to ponds or capture fisheries. It's a boon to the landless people who don't have land. They also can do culture of fishes. So it's a boon to the poor landless people. They simply need to apply to the State Fisheries Department under the PMMSY scheme, and then they will be given a certain area in the sea or maybe in the backwaters to do cage farming. So it's a boon to the poor landless people. The cost of capital is less. You need not invest in purchasing pond preparation, and so on and so forth. Then farm management is very easier, because as I told you, there is no requirement of water exchange. There is no requirement for giving aeration. There is very less management with respect to feed or health management, and the product quality is better because the water quality is pristine. The product quality is fresh when compared to other farming systems. Now coming, with this context, I will start with the breeding part of it. I'll first start with Indian Pompano, which is scientifically called Trachynotus muccali. It belongs to the family Carangidi, commonly called worldwide globally as jacks or pompanos. This is a pelagic species which inhabits the shallow coastal waters. Pelagic means it inhabits mostly the surface waters. It has very high market value. However, in the nature, the standing stock is low, so the capture from the wild is very low. However, it has got excellent characteristics for mariculture, like fast growth rate, good adaptation to captivity, high acceptance to pelleted feed, wide tolerance to salinity. It is an euryhaline species. So all these characters makes it an excellent species for mariculture. So therefore, it has got immense potential. And keeping this in view, CMFRI started developing broodstock way back in 2013 at Visakhapatnam Center, and the first successful seed production was done in 2016, globally for the first time. Now coming to the source of broodstock, broodstock was collected from wild using a fishing method called hooks and lines. Off Visakhapatnam, there are areas of rocky areas. So in these rocky areas, this fishes inhabit. So using targeted specific hooks and lines, these fishes were caught. The size of the collected broodstock was around more than 3 kg. The time taken for developing broodstock was around 2 years. And after catch, the broodstocks were covered in tanks containing aerated water, and to restrict their movement, because once we catch fish from the wild, they will be very violent. So to restrict their movement, to restrict their metabolic activities, there was mild sedation. Sedation was done using anesthetic called 2-phenoxyethanol at the rate of 50 ppm. So the fish was anesthetized and brought to the lab. After bringing to the lab, we had quarantined the fish. We had quarantined the fish for 4 to 5 days. In quarantine was mostly done to reduce the parasitic or the bacterial infection. This quarantine was carried out in 1 meter cube or 1 ton tanks. We had given bath treatment of formalin in fresh water, because these are purely marine species. So if we give formalin in fresh water, whatever parasitic or bacterial infection is there, because they are marine species, so they will die. So that was the reason of giving bath treatment of formalin in fresh water at the rate of 30 ppm for 15 minutes. After that, the fish was shifted to another tank, and again next day treatment was given. So subsequently, every 4 to 5 days, at least 7 to 8 times treatment was given. And when we were sure that the fishes were free from parasites, the fishes were shifted from quarantine to the broodstock tank. Coming to the broodstock tank, whatever we use here is used both for maturation as well as for spawning. We use 100-ton capacity tanks, 100-ton capacity circular tanks we use. It is used mostly for maturation as well as for spawning. The tank color, what we use is gray in color. We have the roofing is, we use PVC roofs and filtered and clear seawater with the pure seawater with salinity of 30 to 35 ppt, that is seawater salinity, and temperature of 27 to 32 degrees centigrade is being used for rearing the fishes, for maturing them, as well as for spawning experiments. And we have an RAS system. The water quality is being maintained using we can use either flow through or RAS, but here we use RAS. I'll come to the RAS in subsequent slides. And the RAS, the recirculation is over 300% daily. That means the entire water is exchanged 3 times, completely exchanged 3 times. This helps to maintain optimum water quality and in turn triggers maturation and spawning of the fish. Now, I was telling about the RAS, the recirculatory aquaculture system, what we have developed here. You can see in the bottom right is the broodstock tank. I told circular tanks of 100-ton capacity. It is connected. There are 2 ways here. One way you can see from the bottom. In the bottom, there is an outlet through which the water is pumped. You can see a pump at the left-hand side top. Water is pumped from the bottom of the tank to rapid sand filter. We have two rapid sand filters. These rapid sand filters out the coarse particles, the fecal matter of the fish, the excess feed, and these particles are being filtered by rapid sand filter. From there, it enters the protein skimmer. The protein skimmer, the protein skimmer, it mostly the protein matter is being centrifuged and skimmed out. From there, it goes to the biofilter. The role of biofilter is to maintain the water quality, the nutrients. So in the biofilters, we have beds, we have oyster shells. So these beads are inoculated with nitrifying bacteria like Nitrosomonas and Nitrobacter. And this helps to reduce the ammonium content of the water. It breaks down the ammonia subsequently to nitrite and nitrate. So the water quality gets better. The ammonia which accumulates also get reduced, and then the water comes back to the broodstock tank. So this is the RA system what we have developed here. And when spawning is there, this loop is closed, and you can see another loop at the top of the broodstock tank from where the eggs, when spawning is there, the eggs are taken into the egg collection chamber from where it is collected. So this tank acts both for maturation as well as for spawning. This is an indigenous RA system what we have developed here. Now coming to broodstock management is paramount when we speak of breeding. Externally, we cannot identify sex, whether it is a male or female. It can only be examined by cannulation. We use a cannula or a baby feeding tube of 1 mm inner and 2 mm outer diameter, and then we insert the cannula into the urogenital orifice of males and females to a distance of 6 to 7 centimeter. You can see in the figure, and then we suck it. We suck from the gonads to see the sperms and the ova. And while doing this, again, as I told you, the fishes will be violent when you take it out of the water. So you need to anesthetize it using 2-phenoxyethanol at the rate of 200 ppm for 2 to 3 minutes. So once you take in this, you can see the condition of the milk or the sperms and the ova. Prior to doing this, the very important thing is tagging of fish. So because we need to know the history of the broodstock, which broodstock has matured, which month, which broodstock had participated in spawning in which month. Maintaining history or maintaining record of broodstock is very important when we go for any breeding program. So we need to tag the fish. We use feed tags, that is passive transponder implant tag, which is inserted into the dorsal side of the fin. And from this tag we can read the number, and then we will know the history or the record of the fish, the broodstock. Then coming to broodstock management, feeding is very important for the fish to mature, because they require optimum quantities of EPA and DHA, eicosapentaenoic acid and docosahexaenoic acid in their feed. So that is very important for maturation in captivity. So the broodstock are fed to satiation at least once daily with squid and clam meat. Squid is a source of protein and lipid, and clam is a very high source of essential fatty acids. Along with that, we supplement it with various vitamins and minerals called a vitamin mineral mix. We supplement it twice a week. You can see in the figure given below, these are squids which are being fed, and in the figure in the right are the clams which are being fed. So these vitamins, mineral premix are being inserted into the squid and are being fed to the fish. I told you, using a cannula or a baby feeding tube, we insert it into the oviduct or to the urogenital orifice, and we suck in the milk, we suck in the eggs, and then from there you seeing the milk, the motility of the milk or the diameter of the egg, we know whether it is mature or it is immature. So to commence or to embark for any breeding program, the female ova has to be more than 500 micrometer. It has to be completely vitellogenic. Yolk has to be fully deposited. It has to be fully vitellogenic, laden with yolk, and the nucleus needs to be migrated to the periphery. The ova diameter generally is around greater than 500 micron or 0.5 mm. Males has to be oozing. When I say oozing, oozing refers to on slight pressure of the on the abdomen, the milk should come out. The milk should have milk should be motile. It should be moving continuously. So when we see oozing males and females with ova more than 500 micron, you can see the figure in the right shows the female ovas with the diameters. So when we have oozing males and female with more than 500 micron ova diameter, we select them for giving hormones for spawning. So this hormonal induction, for this hormonal induction, we use HCG, that is human chorionic gonadotropin. HCG is used at 350 IU, that is international unit, 350 IU per kg body weight, both same dose for males and females. So we give 350 IU per kg body weight. The sex ratio, what we use, that is the number of males to number of females. In this breeding program, we take for one female, we take 2 males. So suppose in this breeding program, if we take 3 individuals, out of the 3 individuals, 1 has to be female and 2 has to be males. So this ratio between males and females is 2:1. So we have seen that 36 hours after injection, the fishes respond and the eggs are being released. Then the fertilized eggs are, then we need to separate the fertilized eggs and the non-fertilized eggs. So the fertilized eggs are those which are floating in the surface, and these eggs are non-adhesive and pelagic, and because of water going inside, the egg swells, and because of this, the size increases to around 0.9 to 1 mm in diameter, and these eggs are being collected. I shown you in the earlier figure, the RAS figure, we have an egg collection chamber. So in the egg collection chamber, we fit a mesh bag of around 500 micron. So this 500 micron mesh bag is tied in the egg collection chamber, and the eggs gets collected in this egg collection chamber, and from this, the eggs are being scooped off with a 500 micron mesh sieve. Then coming to egg disinfection, we have to disinfect the eggs with povidone iodine. Povidone iodine 20 ppm is used for egg disinfection. We add povidone iodine to the eggs which are being kept in aquarium for 10 minutes, and then once the eggs are being treated, are being disinfected, we wash and again restock it in glass aquarium with water salinity of 30 to 32 ppt. As I told you, the fertilized eggs will float on the water surface, whereas the unfertilized or the dead eggs will settle at the bottom. So that these dead eggs are siphoned out, and only the fertilized eggs are allowed to hatch out. Now, prior to incubation or hatching, we need to identify the egg quality. So there are various methods to estimate the quality of eggs, both qualitative and quantitative methods. So under a microscope, we examine. Generally, what we do is that we examine it under a microscope. You can see the eggs on the right hand side. This should be regular in shape. The individual cells should be regular. The eggs and embryos should be transparent. You can see they are transparent with no dark areas. And the chorions or the egg shells, the outer shells of the chorions should be free from any parasite or any fowlers. So if all these parameters are met, then we use those eggs for subsequent incubation and hatching. Then we also estimate the fertilization and hatching rates. The fertilization rate is estimated from the number of fertilized eggs, and from the fertilized eggs divided by the total number of eggs into 100. For counting the fertilization rates, we collect 10 egg samples are randomly taken from 10 different places, and this estimation is being done. We also estimate the hatching rates. Once the eggs hatches out after 18 to 20 hours, we again take the samples randomly from using a PVC pipe from 10 different places, and then we estimate the hatching rate using the formula of hatched out larvae by the total number of fertilized eggs into 100. Now, once the larvae hatches out, we can see on the right hand side newly hatched out larvae. These are very, very sensitive. So we generally in the rearing tank where we do the larval rearing, the eggs are stocked at the height stage. So at the height stage, the eggs are very sturdy. So we stock the eggs at the height stage. Whereas if we stock newly hatched larvae, we have to be very careful because they are very sensitive. So these are the various developmental stages of fertilized eggs. So initially it starts with blastula, then gastrula comes, subsequently division happens. From gastrula we go to the budding stage, then segmentation and so on, and finally hatching occurs. This hatching time at temperature of 28 to 30 degrees centigrade is around 22 to 24 hours. And the size of the fertilized eggs I told is around 1 mm. It is greater than 950 microns. So once the larvae hatches out or in the height stage, we use them for larval rearing. These larval rearing tanks are generally round tanks or rectangular tanks of around 2-ton capacity with 1.2 meter depth of water. Aeration is very, very important. We use a single aeration point. This area, you can see the aeration tubes here. In the right hand side, we give the aeration in the center, and this is connected to oxygen cylinders or a PSA concentrator. Aeration during the initial stages of larval rearing should be mild, and subsequently when the larvae grows, the aeration is increased. And for larval rearing, we use filtered seawater. We have filters in the sea, so from there we extract water. We filter in water through. We have a slow sand filter through which water is being filtered, and then subsequently we treat it with ozone to kill microbes. The ozone concentration used is around 0.1 ppm for 5 minutes. We ensure that there is no residual ozone, because if residual ozone is there, then this may also impact the larvae which are being stocked. Then larval development, newly hatched out larvae of Indian pompano is around 2.12 millimeter in total length. By first DPH refers to days post hatch. Generally in hatchery, we use the term as days post hatch or DPH. So by the end of first DPH, the body length increases to 2.558 mm. The mouth opening occurs by 46 hours post hatch, that is on the third day. From the beginning, from hatching to third day, it sustains on the yolk sac. So the mouth opening happens on the by 46 hours post hatch. Eye starts to show visible pigmentation, and the mouth opens, and the mouth gap at that time is around 228 micron. The first feed used is enriched rotifers of around less than 100 micron, and Copepod nauplius are used as initial feed. But then by 8 days post hatch, the dorsal, caudal, and pelvic fin starts to appear. Melanin pigmentation also starts from 10th DPH, and around 21st DPH, the larvae metamorphose into fry. The body color during the larval phase is dark, and from dark the body color changes to silvery on completion of metamorphosis to juveniles by around the 21st days post hatch. This is the larval rearing protocol. What we use here, we use green water system for larval rearing. Green water means the water is inoculated with microalgae nanochloropsis at 10 to the power 5 cells per ml. So we use green water system. Then I told you by 46 days post hatch or by third day, we add Copepod nauplius and rotifers less than 100 micron. Then bigger sized rotifers with higher concentration is being added as the larvae grows from 6 days onwards. Additionally, because once the larvae grow, they require more amount of feed. So Artemia is given from around 7th day, and from around 11th day, artificial pelleted feed is being given. So we start weaning the larvae to artificial pelleted feed from around 11th-12th day onwards. This is about the feed management. Now coming to the water management, because of less feed usage in the initial parts and the larvae being small, the siphoning is done once on 4th, then on 7th, then on 10th day, and once the larvae becomes bigger, around 12th, 13th day, daily siphoning, bottom siphoning is being done to remove the unwanted fecal matter and the excess feed. Again, water exchange, initially it is very low, 10% to begin with, it is 10% on the 5th day, then 20% on the 8th day, and then from 11th day onwards, it is 50%. And once the larvae comes close to metamorphosis, full water exchange is being done. So this is the larval rearing protocol, what we follow here. Then the larval development, you can see the various photographs showing the 0 DPAs, that is the day of post, that is the day on which hatching occurs. Then 2nd day's post hatch. Then this is the 5th day post hatch. You can see the gradual development, the eyes have started to develop. Then you can see 8th day post hatch, the fins, the dorsal, caudal, and the pectoral fins have started to appear by 8th day post hatch. Then by 10th day post hatch, you can see the melanin pigmentation. The melanin pigment has started, and the larvae have become black in color. Then this is the metamorphosed juveniles or the metamorphosed fry. You can see it is mostly silvery in color. The average survival rate from hatching to the obtained fry is around 22.1%. This is very high for marine finfish. Now, if you see globally for marine finfish, the survival rate during larval rearing is hardly around 10% to 15%. Whereas for Indian pompano at Visakhapatnam, we have achieved a survival rate of around 22%. So this is a record survival in global marine finfish larval rearing. Now pompano is over. I'll come to grouper, orange spotted grouper. Grouper again, similar to pompano, is a very popular species in the reef food fish industry in the Asia Pacific region. There is excellent demand as live fish, live export live fish in Southeast Asian countries, mostly Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, and so on and so forth. It fetches around US dollars 21.45 per kg. So it is highly priced as live fish in Southeast Asian countries. There is huge scope for export of grouper. Domestic price is around 400 rupees per kg. Pompano also, domestic price is around 400 rupees per kg. Culture potential is huge. And keeping this in mind, again, at Visakhapatnam Regional Center, we started developing broodstock a decade back in 2010. And the first successful seed production technology was done in 2016. So here also broodstock we collected using hooks and lines. The size of the collected broodstock was more than 2 kg. The transportation was similar. I am not repeating it again. Now grouper being a demersal fish, unlike pompano, which is a pelagic fish which lives in the surface waters, grouper is a demersal fish. It lives in the bottom, in the rocks and the corals. So when we bring it to the surface, there is a phenomenon called barotrauma, because when it lives in the deeper waters, it is under intense water pressure. Now suddenly when the fish is brought to the surface, because pressure is released, so the fishes get bloated. The air gets inside the abdomen. So when we bring the fish from a depth of intense pressure to the water surface and above, because of the difference in pressure, air from the environment gets into the abdomen. So this is a phenomena called barotrauma, or a trauma caused by pressure. Baro means pressure and trauma means pain. So this is a pain caused by pressure. So after catching from the wild, all fishes shows barotrauma. And this barotrauma is due to the difference in pressure from where they were caught in the sea surface. And this pressure is being relieved by puncturing. We insert a needle into the abdomen and we puncture the gas bladder, and then from there the air gets released. So then the fishes are brought to our lab, our hatchery, and as I told you, similar for pompano, quarantine has to be done. I am not repeating because of paucity of time. The quarantine for grouper is similar to that of Pompano. Then broodstock development. Initially, we used to do broodstock development both in cages as well as in our RAS systems. Subsequently, because of cyclones, frequent cyclones here, for the last few years, we are concentrating purely on land-based development of broodstock in RAS systems. So broodstock tank, again, it is similar to Pompano. We use similar tanks of 100-ton capacity. 100-ton capacity circular tanks of gray color. Water quality management is similar with 300% circulation. And the RAS, what we developed here, you can see from these parameters that the RAS, whatever we have developed, water quality is optimum. TAN is total ammoniacal nitrogen. You can see the TAN is very less. Efficiency of the RAS is around 87.33% in reducing TAN. Ionized ammonia, again very less, similar efficiency percentage. Unionized ammonia, very less, negligible, similar efficiency percentage. Nitrite was also very less. 81% of my nitrite was reduced in the RAS system. pH was optimum. Alkalinity was very good. It was within the ranges for broodstock maturation. Free CO2 was also optimum. Free CO2 was reduced to the tune of 91%. DO was 4.72, which is very good. So this RAS is working fine with respect to broodstock maturation and spawning. The cost of installation was around 4 lakhs for the RAS components, and the running expenditure is also very less. We are not using sophisticated imported things. We are using only locally available materials. So with the running expenditure is very less. The electricity consumed daily is around 36 kilowatts per day. So broodstock management, gender identification is same. Using a cannula, we use it. We insert the cannula into the urogenital orifice of males or into the oviduct of females and suck it to see the eggs and the milk. Now for grouper, there is a very important phenomena called sex reversal. Unlike most fishes, if you see groupers are protogynous. When I say protogynous, I mean initially all are females. If you collect groupers from the wild and if you see its sex, it will all be females. So groupers are protogynous. Proto means first and gynous means females. So groupers are all initially females, and then the largest female gets converted to male. But then converting this largest female to male takes a long time in the wild. So what we have done is we have sex reversed. We have reversed the sex of males to females in half the population. So because for any breeding program, we need to have equal numbers of males and females. But whatever fish we caught were purely females. So what we have to do is we have to reverse their sex of at least half the fishes from females to males. So this sex reversal was done using 17 alpha methyl testosterone with an aromatase inhibitor at 5 milligram per kg. So we had made pellets. So using 17 alpha MT at 5 milligram per kg and an aromatase inhibitor at 0.2 milligram per kg, we had mixed it with the cholesterol and gum acacia in the ratio of 1:2:1, and this was inserted or implanted into the dorsal fin, and we have seen that within 4 months, the females got converted to males. So broodstock feeding is same as I told you with squid. It's mostly squid here, and the squid is supplemented with vitamin and mineral mix, similar to that for Pompano. The breeding protocol in Pompano, we had to induce it. We had to induce it using hormones. You remember we used HCG at 350 IU per kg body weight. However, in grouper, initially, though we were required to implant hormones, but subsequently natural spawning was obtained. For the last 2-3 years in our RAS system, because of optimum water quality, we have been obtaining natural spontaneous spawning. Presently there is no requirement for inducing any hormones for for inducing groupers. The entire spawning program is purely natural. Natural spawning is there, and we have photographed their spawning behavior. You can see that prior to spawning, there is a nuptial coloration. The males are brightly colored, and the females, some bands occur, and the spawning pair happens. If you can see, the spawning pair is happening, then the pairs jump to the water surface, and then again it goes down. It again dashes to the water surface, and then they release their eggs and sperms into the water. So we have photographed the entire spawning behavior of groupers. Now, as I told you, in our RAS system, we have natural spawning without any hormone induction. Every month, around 10 to 15 days, we observe spawning, because this is a batch spawner. Grouper is a batch spawner. So it releases eggs in batches. So in a month, around 10 to 15 days, in a month, we observe spawning around the year. Generally, we use 22 brooders, 10 sex reverse male and 12 females. And if you can see, in 365 days, 190 days spawning was achieved. That means 52% of the year we had spawning. So round the year, continuous spawning has been achieved. Natural spawning has been achieved in the RAS for grouper. Now, broodstock egg handling and procedure is same. I am not coming into it because of shortage of time. Again, egg disinfection is same, using povidone iodine 20 ppm. We disinfect the eggs. Egg quality again is same. It is similar for almost all marine fishes. I am not coming into the intricacies. Similar is fertilization rates and hatching rates. The procedure is same. It is same. So I am not repeating it. This is also same. We generally stock at the height stage, because at the height stage they are more sturdy, whereas the newly hatched larvae are very sensitive to changes in water quality. We use 2-ton tanks and also use 10-ton tanks for larval rearing. Already I had told, in 2-ton tanks we use central aeration, whereas in 10-ton tanks we use grid aeration. So aeration, as I told you, is mild during the initial stages, and subsequently it is increased. So larval development, grouper larvae is smaller when compared to pompano larvae. If you remember, pompano larvae at the time of hatching was around 2.1 mm in length. For grouper, the newly hatched larvae measure around 1.2 to 1.4 mm in length. Mouth opens on the 3rd day, around 60 hours. For pompano, it used to open on 46 hours. So mouth opens around 60 hours for grouper. By 3rd DPH, that is days post hatch, the yolk sac is completely absorbed. Initial mouth gape also is smaller. It's only 120 micron. If you remember, for pompano, it was around 218 micron. For grouper, it is much less. It is 120 micron. After 10 to 12 hours, it increases to 180 micron. By 3rd day, when the yolk sac is completely absorbed, the stomach and the eyes becomes pigmented. By 6 to 8 days post-hatch, the dorsal and pectoral spine buds appear. By 10 to 25 DPH, most larvae have elongated dorsal and pelvic spines, typical of most serranids. And around 25th DPH, the body pigmentation increases, melanin deposition becomes intense, and the larvae appear darker in color. This is the larval rearing protocol. Similar to pompano, green water is being used. Nanochloropsis, a microalgae, is being used in the rearing medium at 10 to the power 5 cells per ml. Here also, from 3rd day onwards, we use rotifers, because the mouth gape is small here in grouper as compared to pompano. So we use less than 80 micron rotifers. Copepods, nauplias are being added. Then rotifers, bigger size rotifers are added from 7th day onwards. The concentration also is increased. Subsequently, from 16th, 17th day, artemia is being given, and artificial diet starts around the same time. The weaning to artificial diet starts around the same time. Coming to water, this is about feed management. Coming to water management, initially, because the larvae is small, the feed used is less, so siphoning is every 4th day it is done, beginning from 8th, 12th, 16th, 20th, and then from 22nd day continuous siphoning, bottom siphoning is being done to remove the fecal matter and the excess feed. Water exchange, initially it is 10% from around the 18th to 28th day, which is increased to around 20% after 25th day, then to 50% by 30th day, and after 30th day, the entire water is being exchanged. Then the critical stages of larval development for grouper at the time of hatching, then 3rd DPH when the yolk sac gets absorbed, the 8th DPH when buds of pectoral and dorsal spines appear, 15th DPH when the pectoral and the dorsal spines gets elongated, then 28th DPH when it is fully elongated, and by 27th DPH when the melanin pigmentation is almost complete. So these are the very critical stages of larval development. In these stages, mass mortality occurs in groupers. The metamorphosis occurs by around the 35th day. By 35th day, metamorphosis of larvae to fry happens. For pompano, if you remember, it was around 21st day. For grouper, it takes longer. It takes around 35 to 42 days for it to metamorphose. The highest survival rate, whatever we have achieved, is 16.73% from hatching to fry. These are grouper seeds. So now once seeds are ready for both pompano and grouper, we have to embark on culture. So to come into the second part of my presentation, which is on culture. So basically culture, there are two aspects of culture. One is nursery rearing. Nursery rearing is stocking seeds or metamorphosed fry, 2 fingerlings, and subsequently to stockable size in cages and in ponds. So nursery is very important for marine fin fishes. So nursery we do mostly in either in indoor systems, that is in FRP tanks or cement tanks or in RAS systems. Sorry. We also do nursery in cages. We add Hapa to cages, and we also do nursery in cages. I'll come in subsequent slides. Grow out is mostly in cages. So in grow out, 3 aspects are very important. One is feed, the other is health, and the other is cage management. So these 3 are very important as far as grow out is concerned. Then coming to nursery for grouper, nursery involves mostly of rearing seeds around 0.5 to 1 gram seeds to around 15 grams. So 0.5 to 1 gram seed is being raised to 15 gram seeds. These 15 gram seeds are ready for stocking for grow out. So this takes around 2 months. We can use concrete cement tanks, we can use FRP tanks, we can use RAS. In RAS, we can stock at much higher stocking densities because water quality is pristine. So nursery for grouper basically involves rearing from 0.5 to 1 gram to around 15 grams. So during nursery, floating feeds are being used. The feeding frequency is more, 4 times feed is being given at 8% of body weight. We use 45% crude protein and 10% fat feed during nursery rearing. Then grow out, I told you it's mostly in marine cages or backwater cages. If it is marine cages in India, we use 6 meter dia HDP cages with 3 to 4 meter net depth. The volume of the water is around 100 meter cube. The stocking density of grouper is 15 to 20 numbers per meter cube. The culture period is around 18 to 20 months. By that time, it reaches around close to 2 kilogram in size. However, if you see in other countries, in most Asian countries, they do it in backwaters. In backwaters, rectangular cages, 3.5 into 3.5 into 2 to 4.5 meters. These are all rectangular cages, either in offshore or in backwaters. And the stocking density is also around 10 to 20 numbers per meter cube. So this is growth, whatever we have seen here in our experiments. The axis on the bottom gives the duration of culture. The axis on the left gives the size in terms of weight. And you can see two stocking densities were used, 15 and 20 numbers per meter cube. The stocking size was 10 grams, around 12 centimeters. It was fed 40% protein and 10% lipid fat, artificial pelleted feed, 4 to 6% of body weight. Then for the first 3 months, after 3 months, it was fed low value fishes, low value trash fishes at 7 to 10% body weight. The FCR, for FCR is feed conversion ratio, that is to have 1 kilogram weight of the cultured fish, how much kilogram of feed we use. So the FCR, when we used the FCR for pelleted feed during the initial 3 months was 1:1.7, 1:1.8. When we used low value fishes, the FCR was around 1:5.8 to 1:6.7. So we see that the stocking density at both, the growth was more or less equal. There was not much difference in growth in both the stocking densities. And by the 13th month, by the end of 1 year, it reached around 1.4 kilogram in weight. So it has tremendous growth potential, as you can see from this graph. Feeding, and in the cages we feed around 2 to 3 times. Initially we feed with pelleted feed. Subsequently, once the fishes grow more than 200 grams, once the fishes grows more than 200 grams, we feed them with low value fishes. We also do health and growth monitoring fortnightly. Then cage management is very important in the marine environment because of fouling. So we have to clean monthly the cage frames. We have to do net exchange because the net gets fouled with so many fouling organisms, algae, barnacles, crabs, and so on. So this net requires to be cleaned and changed every monthly depending on the fouling and the accumulation. And also mooring or anchoring. Anchoring we have to check every fortnightly. So these three basically are cage management things: cleaning of cage frame at monthly intervals, net changing and cleaning at monthly intervals, and mooring checking at fortnightly intervals. Then harvest, as I told you, live groupers fetch excellent prices in the Southeast Asian countries, and the live specimens, the price realized is 3 to 5 times more than what we achieve by selling dead fish. So groupers are very highly valued food fish in the Southeast Asian countries. This is an economics of sea cage farming of orange spotted grouper for a cluster of 10 cages. If you, I'm not going into the intricacies because so many things are involved here. But if you see the cost of for a battery of 10 cages is around 88 lakhs. And if you see the net profit comes to around 19 lakhs. So if you have a cluster of 10 cages and if you do farming for a year, then around 19 lakhs profit you can expect. Then coming to Pompano, as I told you, nursery is very important. So in nursery, from 1 gram size, we have to increase to 15 to 20 gram size, which is the optimum size for stocking in cage. This increasing from 1 gram size to around 40 to 15 to 20 gram size takes around 60 days or 70 days, that is 2 months. So we do it similar to grouper. We can do it in cement tanks, we can do it in FRP tanks or RAS in indoor systems, and in Hapa in cages. Similar to grouper, we use 45% crude protein and 10% crude fat during nursery rearing. For grow out in marine, we use HDP cages of 6 meter diameter and 4 to 5 meter net depth. In high saline backwaters, we use rectangular cages 5 into 5 into 4 meters, and stocking density recommended is 15 to 20 numbers per meter cube in backwaters, because in backwaters there is limited water exchange, whereas in the open sea higher stocking densities around 25 to 30 numbers per meter cube can be done. Now, culture of Pompano and different stocking densities. We use two stocking densities of 15 numbers and 30 numbers per meter cube. We had done culture for a year. You can see 365 days, and then the weight gain was around in the lower stocking density. It was close to 900 grams. In the higher stocking density, it was around 700 grams. The stocking size was 20 grams. The FCR was 1:1.8 and 1:1.7. Feeding was done twice with pelleted feed, 40% protein and 10% fat. Survival was very high, 98% and 92.5%. So similar to grouper, you can see for Pompano also it shows excellent growth rate. So feed management is very important to achieve our desired level of production. Initially up to 20 grams, feeding rate is 12%. Subsequently, feeding rate decreases, and when the fishes reach around 1 kilo, the feeding rate comes to around 3%, and subsequently to 2% of body weight. The feed size is initially very small, 1.5 mm pellets we give up to 20 grams, which increases, and as the fish grows bigger, as the weight increases, the size of the pellets also increases. So we have seen good acceptance of artificial pelleted feed for Pompano, 40% protein and 10% feed fat. They are very active and fast moving, so continuous feeding has to be done. In grouper, we have observed some degree of cannibalism when there is difference in size. However, in Pompano, there is no cannibalism and growth was found to be uniform. So marketing, unlike grouper, which have huge demand in export market as live fish, for Pompano, the fish is sold mostly in the domestic markets. The price is around 300 to 350 rupees per kg. The cost of production is around 200 to 220 per kg. So for each kg of production, for each kg of fish sold, you can have a profit of minimum 100 rupees. The cost of production is 200 to 220 rupees per kilo. The sell price is 300 to 350 rupees per kilo. So a net profit is of around rupees 100 per kilo is obtained. This is a case study of culture of Indian Pompano. I'm not going into the details because of paucity of time. If you see around 2 tons, at the bottom 2 tons was harvested. Survival was 92%. The FCR was 1:4 to 1:7 for grouper and 1:1.8 to 1:1.9 for Pompano. Thank you. If you have any questions, you are free to ask me.
If there are any questions, please ask. We have a few minutes left so that we could ask the questions.
Good morning, sir. This is Dr. Selvaraj from Fisheries College and College of Fisheries, Ponneri, sir. Sir, in Pompano breeding, in Pompano breeding, we are telling about the quarantine of the brood stock in formalin at 30 ppm for 15 minutes. So do we need to do the quarantine in the freshwater, sir? Because it would be undergoing serious stress.
No, formalin treatment is used in freshwater. Formalin plus freshwater bath.
Okay, sir. So what about the survival, sir? Because it is completely, the salinity is drastically reduced. So I was thinking, like, is there any mortality observed during the quarantine period, sir?
No. Because this is purely a deep treatment. So immediately after dipping 2 or 3 minutes, we again revert the fish back to normal marine saline water. So we have not observed any mortality.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any other question? There is a question about what is the mesh size of the cage.
Yeah, the mesh size of the cage has got 3 nets. The cage has got 3 nets. There is a outer net which protects from the predators. The predators which are occurring in the wild, to protect from them, there is an outer net which has a mesh of around 40 mm. So this outer mesh net is 40 mm. The inner net is for the grow out. The inner mesh is around 25 mm. And we have a bird net to protect from birds, that is around 80 mm. However, the size of the inner net depends on the size of the fish you are stocking. So when you are stocking very small size fish, the mesh size you have to reduce. However, when you are stocking around 15 grams or 20 gram fish, 25 mm mesh size is found to be optimum. The inner net mesh.
Any other question?
Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Solar HDP, you know.
Yeah. Cage materials are HDP. Generally, what we do is that when we do it in the marine environment, we do it with HDP. When we do it in backwaters, we generally use GI, because GI is less costly when compared to HDP. So for backwaters, we use GI cages, whereas for marine we use purely HDP.
But with GI, you must be having the corrosion problem.
Yes, for GI we coat with the epoxy paints, and every year again it has to be coated with epoxy paints.
Okay. Sir, what about its commercial production? Since you have standardized already this technology since 2016, about its commercial production, why people are not coming up?
No, I don't agree with you. People are coming up. NFDB have called for an expression of interest, and so many hatcheries. There have been hatcheries in West Bengal. There have been hatcheries in Andhra Pradesh. There are hatcheries in Tamil Nadu with whom we have entered into MOU based on that UI, and we have been giving them fertilized eggs. So they are themselves producing and on a commercial scale, and they are distributing seeds. Because as you know, being a research institute, we don't have that much of area to produce seeds. So we have transferred the technology to private farmers, hatcheries who have expressed their interest to MOU with us, and then we have and then they are producing on a commercial scale.
Sir, one more question, sir.
Yeah, please.
You are catching those matured fishes by hook and line. That's what you told, isn't it, sir?
Not exactly mature. We are collecting good stock. It is mostly immature individuals. So we are collecting them by hooks and lines. Yeah, right.
Is it not like harming? Like the hooks will be entered into the mouth, and is it not injuring them?
Yeah, sometimes when we because good stock we can only collect using hooks and lines from the marine systems. If we use other systems like trawling or gill netting or personing, because of the hauling duration, it is very difficult to get live fishes. Only in hooks and lines we can catch live fishes. But as you told, sometimes because the hooks entered into the jaw, and sometimes it harms the jaws, or maybe sometimes it gets into the fish. So when it harms the jaws, sometimes the fish dies. So we take only the live fishes which are in optimum health condition.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you very much, sir. Very nice presentation. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, there is one more question from Dr. Selvaraj. In the grouper breeding, you were telling that like to overcome the hydrostatic pressure changes when the wild specimens are collected and transported to indoor condition, you generally do the puncturing of the gallbladder.
Yeah.
So